Hello and welcome. Today, we're journeying back in time, way back, to explore the very origins of Sri Lanka. And we're going to do it by looking at two really different and often competing stories, one from an ancient epic chronicle, and the other from the hard evidence of modern science. It's a clash of narratives. So let's start with a big question, right? How does any nation, anywhere, tell its own story? What are the threads that get woven together to create a collective identity? That feeling of a shared past? Is it through these grand, sweeping stories, the chronicles written by monks and scholars centuries ago, designed to create this one continuous line of kings and conquests, and maybe even a divine purpose? Or is a nation's true story found in what's left behind, in all those silent clues buried deep in the earth for thousands of years? Tools, bones, jewelry, things that tell a story without words, a story that might be way, way older than any book. Okay, so first up, let's dive into that traditional story, the epic origin that has been the foundation of Sri Lanka's history for generations. At the very heart of this narrative is a book called the Mahavamsa. Now, this is way more than just a history text. Written back in the 6th century, it's a cornerstone of national identity for the Sinhalese people. It gives this powerful feeling of an unbroken nation, stretching back over 2,000 years. And the Mahavamsa kicks off with a classic epic journey. It tells the story of Prince Vijaya, who sails from North India with his followers, lands on the island, and establishes the very first Sinhalese kingdom. For a long, long time, this was the accepted origin story. But this is where things get really interesting. Let's pivot from the written word and look at what the ground itself has to say. The archeological record tells the story of the island's first inhabitants, and believe me, it's a very different and much, much older tale. So, what happens to that traditional timeline when science uncovers evidence that people were living on this island tens of thousands of years before Prince Vijaya was even born? So, meet the Balangoda Man. This isn't a character from a legend. This is a reconstruction based on actual ancient human remains. He represents the real, prehistoric people who called the island home long before any recorded history. And to really get a sense of the incredible depth of time we're talking about, get this. Archaeologists have found modern human, Homo sapiens, remains at sites like the Batsudamba Lana cave that go back at least 28,500 years. That just completely rewrites the clock on human settlement here. And don't think for a second these early people were primitive. The evidence shows a surprisingly advanced culture. They were crafting these incredible daggers from antlers, powerful hand axes from elephant bones. They had tools for grinding grains, and they even made jewelry. Check it out, shark tooth pendants and colorful stone beads. This was a complex society. And that complexity didn't just fade away. Long before Europeans showed up, Sri Lanka was home to a seriously powerful and technologically advanced civilization that built absolute wonders. We're talking about the Anuradhapura Kingdom. It was founded way back in 437 BC, and it wasn't just some small state. It was a major power that lasted for almost 1,500 years. Just look at this timeline, from its founding to developing high-tech furnaces to the arrival of the Buddha's tooth relic, which is still a symbol of power today. I mean, the scale of what they accomplished is just staggering. They built these massive, intricate irrigation networks to manage water. They constructed enormous stupas, these huge dome-like structures. They had international trade ports, their own currency, a complex legal system, and they had world-class steel production. In fact, some sources say their high-carbon steel was actually exported to make the legendary Damascus swords. Incredible stuff. Okay, so now that we know about this deep prehistoric past and this highly advanced ancient kingdom, how does that change the way we look at the Mahavamsa and its origin story? Well, this brings us to this central debate. On one side, you have people who see the Mahavamsa as a historical record, a cherished symbol that's even backed up by some inscriptions found in India. But on the other side, critics see it as an ideological text, written with a very specific political goal of creating a single Sinhala Buddhist identity. And this isn't just some dusty academic argument, it has real, profound impacts on modern Sri Lankan identity. And this quote from the scholar P.K. Balabhachandran really sums up the modern perspective. The point isn't to just throw the chronicle away, but to put it in context, to see it as a product of its time with a specific purpose, not as some unchanging holy truth that's set in stone forever. But hold on, this story isn't over. The latest clue in this massive puzzle doesn't come from an ancient cave or a dusty text. Nope, it comes from our own DNA, and it adds a final, fascinating twist to the whole thing. First, a little bit of important backstory. The Mahavamsa story about a North Indian origin became super popular during the colonial era. Why? Well, as one source points out, the idea that the Sinhalese were Aryan, just like their British rulers, gave the local elite a kind of elevated status. So naturally, that narrative was really embraced. But then, modern genetic science came along and told a completely different story. A recent DNA study basically shatters that Aryan origin myth. The results are just striking. They show a high degree of shared ancestry with Sri Lanka's own indigenous Adivasi people and with populations in South India. And the big surprise? They found very few, if any, unique genetic markers from North India. The conclusion is pretty clear, and it's profound. Genetically speaking, the Sinhalese people are most closely related to the island's own indigenous inhabitants and their neighbors in South India. This points to a story not of conquest and replacement by some foreign prince, but of a deep, shared, local ancestry that goes back thousands and thousands of years.
And that really leaves us with a final, crucial question. When science unearths new truths, whether they're from ancient bones or from our own DNA, that challenge a nation's most cherished founding myth, how does that nation adapt? How do you weave these new scientific threads into the fabric of your own story?